Okay, in today's lecture, I want to talk to you a little bit about metrics. Um, in marketing, there's in business, there is a stigma in marketing that has not been totally solved yet. For many, many years, marketing departments were really advertising departments and branding departments, and for hundreds of years. And there came this kind of revolution of the importance of the bottom line and ROI and those type of things in the early, 60s, Deming and those type of things, and kind of measuring and it kind of grew into this situation where marketing is what they kind of refer to as the black hole of the business. That they'll put money into it, but they're never really sure what comes out of it. And it's been tough because marketing is traditionally a very creative department, right? We have to grab the attention of tens, hundreds, thousands of people, and that's not an easy thing to do. So we had to be very creative in our advertising and bold and whatever it might be, just to get people's attention. But attention is only kind of that top end of the filter. Market share for the long, awareness was kind of what the main metric was, is how many people knew about your product and that type of thing, but they didn't really drive more into marketing other than that. And as this revolution of metrics and KPIs and business purpose and design came about, marketing was a little slow on the uptake to explain the value of what they were doing in terms of numbers and metrics. With the advent of digital marketing, that's become easier, and we see more and more marketing really tying their efforts into the bottom line. But it's been tough, and it's going to continually to be tough, because in a B2B sales environment, which still requires a salesperson, the salesperson makes the sale, and they take credit for that sale because they happen to be there right when the deal contract is done. And so they get most, if not all, of the credit for what could have been a very laborious project, a laborious campaign by marketing to get that client in the door and talking to the salesperson. So, and we even see more and more shift away from people even wanting to have a salesperson involved in the process, that they want to be more discovery and inbound and find out for themselves kind of opportunities and software and those type of things. So it's been helpful that we've understood a little bit more of the metrics, but I put a little cautionary tale out there is as we drive marketing to a complete metric level of functionality, we're gonna move that pendulum a little bit too far and forget we also have to be creative. When we create, content is king, or when we write, SEO, and we do paid advertising, yeah, those are going to get traffic. But if we don't segment, if we don't write creative ads, creative copyright, be creative in where we're advertising, we're going to miss out on the attention that we need to get from our potential customers. So as the pendulum swings into metrics, we have to kind of don't forget that marketing is a marriage of the science with the creative, and it's not just one or the other. But that being the case, we in marketing fail to design campaigns and efforts with metrics in mind. We know what we need to get done. We know the right steps. We even kind of sometimes feel when it's being effective, but we don't do a great job outlining what we're going to measure up front for the projects that we're going to do. And what you can get by with that for a little bit, we're missing out on a great opportunity, I think, because we're afraid, right? Marketing is sometimes an investment or something you're not going to see results right away for. And so we're a little bit afraid to measure our results because there's a chance that it's not going to produce good numbers up front. That's very likely. And if we don't have good numbers up front, then we take those to the executive team, and they're very much today oriented, and we could lose our jobs, we could lose our opportunities, we could shift campaigns, and that's all often wrong decisions, is to throw away a campaign that's just started because it's not producing results right up front. And that's where we have to come in and say, as marketers, if we can track what we're doing up front, we then we then know what levers we pull, what kind of success we're having, right? A/B testing, or change of content, or different market segments, different messaging, different titles, whatever it might be, is we kind of adjust these levers. If we're measuring it across the way, we can pull one lever and see what happens to the results. And so we miss out on this opportunity to have good conversations around metrics. I don't think metrics solves our problems, but they allow us to start to understand them and then make decisions based off of some of the things we're seeing. So this next lecture segment is going to go through some metrics and important ones, at least a few of them in marketing. There's so many. And then I want to share with you a couple examples. So just a sec, I'll pause, go from there. Okay, every metric. So here on the board, what I've got is kind of what I would call the template that you ought to use. You ought to write this down somewhere in your marketing department and just say, okay, as we discover what metrics we're going to measure and track, and what we can track and what we have data for, that's a whole other conversation. You set up a metric generally in this simple format. Okay, and just about everything you do in marketing, there's very few things I know in marketing that you can't track, but that's for another story too. The idea is that, what's your source, right? Your channel. Did you segment that channel? If not, you can leave this one out. Better data, the better, right? But sometimes you can even segment further a specific channel. What was the actual, value? What is the metric that you gained? And you always tie it to a time, right? So week, day, month, depending on your buying cycle or however you measure things. Okay? So very simple, right? Let's just do a simple example. Okay? Email is my source. I don't have segment plan. I send out 10,000 emails. Okay, so there's how many I sent, and this week. Okay, it's as simple as it gets. Here's how many emails I sent this week. Does it give me a lot of information? No. What does it tell me? At least tells me how much work I did so I can keep my job. That's not all bad. But can we perhaps go a little bit further? Sure. From those 10,000 emails, we had 500 clicks. And from those 500 clicks, we ended up with maybe 4 purchases or conversions, whatever your business might be. Okay, whatever your conversion might be, downloads, white papers, clicks, whatever it might be, demos. Okay, so here, our segment value. Here's some metrics we're getting from those values, and they all happened this week. And we can look at just about everything we're doing in marketing and design a metric to measure just kind of with that simple formula. Okay? Just don't forget the time range as you report it, okay? And as you do some math going forward. So this kind of is just our basic formula to design a metric that we might be able to track. Now, if we have email, but maybe we have segmented our email list by different audiences, different demographics, different age groups, whatever it might be, maybe it's just different email lists, okay? That's where you can then start to segment this tracking here into different groups. Okay, so this thing 2,000, we said 2,000 to this segment, 2,000 to this segment, 2,000 to this segment, and here's the results we got. Just by starting to measure the things that we're doing, we get to look into it and say, what is it that changed? What is it that didn't change? And it's not necessarily an exact answer, right? If one segment performed much better than the other, well, there are a lot of variables that come into that. Did you segment the list better? Maybe. Is that audience more attractive? Maybe. Maybe you sent the lists at different times of the day. One list went at night for some reason, and one list went into the day. So there are other sets of variables that can impact performance, but you can't have those conversations unless you're at least starting to track things and say, oh, well, this one performed better, why? And then you make some more assumptions and presumptions, and you go forward. And that's really how marketing works. It's, you know, an email example, I laugh because every year, some big company will come out and say, well, it turns out that the best time to send out emails is Tuesday mornings at 9:05 a.m. And then what does everybody do for the next year? They send out emails at Tuesday morning at 9:05 a.m. and then it becomes the worst time to send out email. If I were an email company, well, a competitor, I would tell out of time, and then I would use my emails at a different time because I see it change every year. As soon as somebody publishes that, everybody pushes during that time, and then we all get bombarded, and you know, and then a ton of noise during that same time. Okay, so this is just the basic kind of setup of metrics. I want to show you a few examples of marketing metrics and how you might use these formulas and these metrics in marketing a little bit. So let me pause and set another one up. Okay. This is a metric that I came across just this year. So even I'm always learning, and I found it really interesting because I've always tried to figure out how do I determine, and Google has a metric on this too, how do I determine the value of my organic traffic? You know, my SEO that I'm doing. How do I value that? How do I decide? Because, you know, SEO and content is really a time issue, right? It's somebody writing and metadata and tweaking and fixing content and all of that to generate more organic traffic. So how do I measure the value of my SEO? And I came across this as one. There's other ways of doing this, but I thought this was a really neat kind of way to see what are my organic methods doing for my business in terms of opportunity. So let me just show you an example here, okay? This is assuming I'm running some paid ads. So this is over a month, okay, in this case, and I'm spending $100,000 a month on paid ads, and it's drawing in a little over 1 million individuals, right? Hits, conversion, or not, at least, you know, traffic to my website. And I can track what my ads bring in, right? That's pretty easy to track on Google. And Google obviously will track my organic searches. So here's my organic traffic. So the question is, what's the value of my organic traffic, okay? So if you come over to here that I've set up, a couple of things we can start to understand, all right? First thing is we can figure out what percentage of each of our sources are, right? So this is going back, sorry, this is our paid. This is our organic, or, you know, SEO, all right? And okay, so how do we first figure out what percentage? So our total traffic I've written out down here is just the addition of these two together. And then you divide this one by your total, and that'll give you what percentage it is of your total traffic. And so if we do this math, I made it really easy. If you want to do it, you can. But it turns out to be that our paid traffic is 75% of our overall traffic, and our organic traffic is a quarter of all of our traffic, okay? The next thing we want to discover, obviously the most important thing very simply, is what is the cost or value, right? In this case, the cost, it's cost in our paid, right? We're spending $100,000 a month to get that traffic, but now we're not spending anything to get this traffic, but we are, right? Time and energy, so you can go and calculate that later if you want to, but the nice thing is if we stop spending here, this number shouldn't be affected too much. Now, it's not a perfect amount, it never is, and there's always data, you know, integrity and data issues and all of that, but generally speaking, this could be something that continues on for our organic efforts, okay? So how do you go to your boss or to your executive and say, look, this organic work that we're doing today could still be we can turn this one off tomorrow, but if we eventually get enough here and get traffic here, we could be saving money, right? That's kind of the conversation. So what you need to do is figure out basically in terms of how much it's costing you to get this traffic and kind of help you figure out what this traffic's worth, okay? So if we take 100,000 divided by this number, we get kind of how much it costs to get a single individual there. And then we multiply that value by our organic traffic, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and just do that real quick. You're gonna be, well, so doing this again. 100,000 is what it's costing, divided by how much traffic I'm getting. Okay, that's my cost per per traffic there. I'm going to multiply that by 359,593. That gives me a value of 33,333. Which means my organic traffic that I am, been building through my organic efforts, my content, my SEO, my social media, whatever it might be, is worth $33,000 a month, right? So it kind of gives me now a little bit of a reference point to understand the efforts that we're making. Is it, if we're spending 100,000 to get this traffic, and it's one single intern, just as an example, developing organic traffic for us, and they're doing this, then you can go see, well, how much are we spending here in order to get this kind of traffic, and is it make sense to spend more or less there, or can we evaluate our content? Again, these metrics aren't going to tell us all, but they're going to allow us to have conversations of value now, right? If we completely shut this one off, does that affect our organic? Very possible, right? There's no perfect science here that just, these aren't, maybe these came to the website and left, came back on a different computer, a different device, came in organically on something they remembered and hit here, and vice versa, okay? So, but we can at least start to see and understand the value of our efforts, the value of our team, what we're working on and what we're doing. And I thought this was a great way, if you're doing paid advertising, to understand what the value of your organic or SEO advertising. So it's a kind of an easy way to look into that and say, okay, now we have some numbers to understand this by. So that was a good one. Let me set up another one for you. Okay, here's a relatively simple one that, let me make a little argument here for real quick, and I'll explain this a little bit further as we talk. Getting the data to measure what's going on in the business is the overall most difficult challenge you're going to have, unfortunately. While there are some reporting on paid advertising, those things through digital marketing alone, when you work into a firm that has many marketing functions and capabilities and channels and a sales team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, accounting and finance and all of that, it becomes a little bit more difficult to get the data. That just means you have to work harder to get it. And the reward is even greater, because it means that probably most departments inside the organization are struggling to measure their effectiveness and their effort. And if you're the one who champions it, you're going to be seen as someone who understands and cares about the success of the business. And if you're someone who's looking to grow within your career, it's not about time, it's not about being in your seat, it's about showing value to the organization. And if you're the one that provides that additional value, that usually gets rewarded in various ways. Not always, right? Not every organization understands that, but normally organizations reward individuals who are providing additional value to the organization. This is just cost per acquisition, but we'll use this for some other metrics that we'll talk about here in a minute. Okay, the cost per acquisition is essentially a metric to see how much is marketing and sales spending, right? What is their total cost divided by their total number of customers in a period of time. Remember, everything comes into a period of time. So make sure out here that value is equal for both of these. But you report it in a period of time. So sales and marketing total costs over the number of new customers. Let's quickly do one of these. Let's say last month, our sales and marketing team's budgets in terms of salary and efforts and all of that, and everything they did, travel, whatever it might be in terms of their, we call them GL codes, right? Whatever their financial codes that tied to their apartments were. Okay, say it was 300,000, and in that time we acquired customers. Right, that means that our cost per acquisition is $10,000, meaning on average, it costs us $10,000 to acquire a new customer, right? And both of these were done, 3,030 in a month, so the time just kind of goes away, but it helps us figure out, making sure everything being equal. All right, that's how much it costs us to acquire a new customer. Okay, so simple metric can be used B2B, B2C, it doesn't matter, but this sets you up to understand and measure a number of areas. Now, one of the things you can go further if your organization is large enough and you have a sales department and a budget and a marketing department and a budget. One of the things that you can do is look at what marketing's percentage of cost per acquisition is versus sales. Okay, so this is a simple equation. What I kind of look at is marketing's percentage of cost per acquisition. Okay, so in this case, it's really simple. Take your same month period, go figure out what your marketing budget is, right? Your marketing costs versus your sales budget, and divide those two, and that will give you a percentage. Okay. So let's just say, going back to this example, if we were 100,000 in marketing and 200,000 in sales, then 100 divided by marketing versus sales, that means marketing is 50% of the sales, right? Marketing is 50% of the total customer acquisition costs in this sense, okay? So, well, what can this number share with you? Well, what this can share with you is, this is marketing's budget in a percentage of the sales budget, okay? Not in terms of percentage of the overall both budgets, so you don't misconfuse that, okay? So marketing is 50% of the sales budget. That's what we're talking about here, okay? Well, some things that this can tell us is possibly that the sales team is underperforming. This could tell us that marketing is spending too much. This could tell us that we're in an investment phase, that we're heavy on marketing, and that's purposeful because we know we're in the growth development, right? This is just kind of a benchmark metric to see where are we spending in marketing versus sales. For the company I consult with, I know right now that the marketing budget is about 5 to 10% of the sales budget. It's just all sales and sales driven. How is that going to help? Well, what we're going to talk about down the road is, if marketing doesn't have much of a budget or influence, it's really hard for them to keep up with the demands and needs of sales, right? To get, MQLs, SQLs, into SQLs, get more awareness into the funnel. And so the sales team could be struggling and choking a little bit because there's not enough marketing budget to support the sales team in that sense. So this could be a good metric to help kind of understand the lopsidedness of a business. And maybe it's purposely so, but this will at least help us kind of gauge and understand if we're having fights internally, right? One of the things you can come to is say, look, here's why maybe marketing's underperforming what sales' expectations are. Well, if you look at our budget compared to your budget, we have very little in comparison. So there's only so much effort we can do. So this just kind of gives us a good benchmark talking point in terms of marketing and sales working together in that sense. So there's a couple, but let me take this a step further.